Marie Fang is a psychologist in San Jose, California. She splits her time between running a private practice focused on helping individuals navigate intersecting identities and her budding online business, Private Practice Skills, which focuses on providing practical how to's to help therapists get their private practice off of the ground. And Marie, thanks for being here today. And
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
it's good to meet you virtually,
Yeah.
as it goes
Yeah.
in the modern era of today. And
Yeah, it's amazing.
yeah. Well, we were just talking before we hit record that I think I came across your content somewhere. I think it was your YouTube content, and it caught my eye because you've got some really great videos, and they're really well produced and self-produced, if I'm not wrong.
Right.
And
Yeah, thank you.
I think, yeah, that kind of caught my eye. But why don't you tell folks just a little bit more about you and what's going on in your world right now and how you got started, on helping therapists?
Yes. Yeah, that's quite a question. I mean, I could start way back, but I will take the whole time. So I'm going to skip ahead a bit, but I will just kind of sum up the earlier parts by saying I always knew I wanted to teach. And so that's partly why I decided to get a doctorate in grad school, becoming a therapist. Not to say that you have to have a doctorate to teach,
Hmm.
by any means. And so I kind of pictured it being at the university level, this sort of, I guess, standard image of that was what I was handed of what teaching looks like. And then just earlier this year in 2018, I got to teach my first MT grad school class. And I loved it so much that at that point, I mean, I love being a therapist so much too, but at that point, I thought, like, I have to do more teaching. Like, it was like, I think I drove my nuts after that class ended. I was like, okay, I got to teach more classes. Like, I'm
Yeah.
applying like a crazy woman to like all the schools at like every level, like community college through grad school to like teaching at a community center. Like, I just wanted to teach.
Mm.
And then over time, maybe 2 months after that class ended, I was really thinking about some of the questions the students had asked me about getting started in private practice and how it just this like taboo, anxiety ridden, there's no way I'll ever be able to do that, and we're not allowed to talk about it kind of culture around it with the students. And they knew I was in private practice, so after class, frequently they would stay and ask questions.
Hmm.
And even since class, have still been emailing me like, can I really do this someday? And I thought, you know what, it's not complicated, but I remember what that felt like.
Mm.
And so I was just thought it wasn't even a business idea at first. It was just like, I have tips because I've done it, and anyone who's done it can share their tips.
Hmm.
And I love teaching, so I might as well just get started and share what I know and, learn as I go as well. And once I started, it was like, there's no looking back. I got sucked in, started doing the videos, and then I made a website, and then I started doing blogs. And now I'm kind of starting to build a few e-courses that haven't launched yet, but that's kind of how the whole thing came to be. And it was this like epic moment where I like woke up one morning, and it was just like the whole idea downloaded in my brain, like the name, and I bought the domain name and I made the logo, and my husband was just playing Xbox and it was like an hour or two. I was on the laptop and I just was like, hey, I made this business. He's like, when did you do that? So it was just one of those things where it clicked into place.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've told this story before, I think even on the show, but the first week that I was in graduate school, they had, you do like an intro to the profession kind of course,
Hmm.
that like none of the students really want to attend because it's extremely dry, and it's like a little about ethics,
Yeah.
a little about the history of the profession and and whatnot. And they had this panel of counselors who were out in the field or had finished the program, whatever, come in and sit down and talk to us about what it's like. And they all looked like they had just been through war. They looked, they were
Yes.
miserable. They complained of having no money whatsoever, working long hours,
Mm.
working with in dangerous
Wow.
situations. And they said unanimously, and the professor said, if you're here, if you think you're going to help people and make money, you're wrong.
Mm.
So you should kind of quit.
Oh.
You should quit this program right
Oh.
now. And I never let go of that, and I held on to it, and it's a lot of why I do what I do today. And I still struggle with why academia seems so averse to preparing students to become business owners. I don't know why that is. And I've even heard like, the dentist, I was talking to a dentist and an eye doctor recently who said, yeah, of course that's part of our training. Like, of course that's at least a portion of what we learn, because most dentists go into private practice. Most eye doctors go into private practice. And it's just, we just seem really slow to catch up, or really resistant to embracing that, or preparing, graduate students to run a successful business.
Yeah. That makes me so sad to hear it, but I mean,
Mm,
it's so in line with my experience too, and really disheartening to think too that like, would we ever say that to our client, that like they can't be a helpful person to society with
mm,
and make money at the same time? It's like, we want, you should make money doing what you love if at
mm-hmm.
all possible, and if we're good at what we do, then people want to pay us for
Yeah.
it. Yeah, that's just so sad.
Well, I think the other thing is, it's really up to us to either advance or stagnate our profession to consumers.
Mhm.
And when we assign a dollar amount to our business or our services or whatever, we also assign value in a way. And
Mhm.
therapists seem incredibly stuck around that. And really, we end up, I think, kind of oppressing one another to stay where you
Yeah.
are, to not be overly anything, overly salesy, overly into marketing, overly kind of indulgent even. And
Mhm.
um, you know, I think that's just a big block, because in reality, like even marketing, for instance, marketing as a therapist, it's not really about you. It's about getting in front of more people so you can help more people. Like, you
Yeah.
don't even really have to think about, am I being vain? Am I being, self-indulgent if I'm putting stuff out there or promoting myself? So I don't know.
Mhm.
And now I'm taking up all the airspace when I really want to ask you questions.
Not at all. No,
Yeah.
I'm with you. You're preaching what I would want to preach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, why
Wow.
do you think that is? I mean, or what's your experience been like with those students who are still, pinging you for more information about private practice?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's my experience of what I hear from others, but also my experience of my own
Hmm.
journey. And I've certainly come a long way, and there's always a long way to go. But I relate with what I hear other people say because I've been there. It's the sense that I'll tell a story of like when I
Yeah.
first started private practice, I was postdoc, as in California, we call it a psych assistant,
Yep.
working in private practice. And I remember my supervisor said I needed to charge what I was worth. So I had a number in my head that was probably like half of market rate, even as an intern. And he said, no, you have to charge at least this much, or if you want to charge more, you can tell me now. And I remember like having an entire supervision meeting, an entire supervision hour with my supervisor, just saying, there's no way I can charge that much money. And of course, it was market rate for my experience, but it was this sense of like, am I really helping people that much? And I don't want to deceive people because I don't know if I really believe that I'm that good.
Hmm.
So maybe I should charge less to just kind of have integrity because I think I'm not that great. And him sort of coming back and saying, you're a really great therapist. This is worth, or you could charge more if you want. And I needed to hear that so many times. Like it probably took me about 2 years to really feel like, oh, no, I should charge this much because I'm offering a service. You start to see your clients experience great outcomes and
Hmm.
realize, oh, I'm actually helping them in a big way, and they're grateful to be
Yeah.
able to pay the right amount for that service so that I can keep doing it, basically. So I think there's insecurity that we have, and that somehow if we charge people for helping them, that it's not real help. Like
Hmm.
this, like we have to have a genuine connection with our clients, which I do absolutely believe in. Um, we have to actually care for people. It's not just, okay, I'm only caring about when you pay me my fee at the end of the
Hmm.
session. But in order to keep doing it, we do have to get paid.
Hmm.
Otherwise, I'd have to have a different job to subsidize it for free or whatever it might be, and it
Yeah.
might not be sustainable. So,
Yeah.
That's my theory, at least.
No, I think so. And I think therapists also, we tend to wait for, it's really about imposter syndrome in a way because we tend to wait for our identity to catch up. Whereas I think what you do,
Yeah.
the way to deal with imposter syndrome of any kind is you actually change the behavior and then the identity eventually catches up, right? Or it's
Yeah.
the idea of acting as if, right, that we might use with our
Hmm.
clients. Like if, you're nervous in a social situation, what would it be like if you just acted as if you weren't? And then you do that, then you
Hmm.
change the behavior and actually the beliefs and feelings and whatnot kind of eventually catch up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I hope that I think on one hand, folks are really not prepared to become business owners right after graduate school,
Mhm.
and I've even had long story short, it's funny you mentioned you wanted to teach, you always had that idea, and so getting the doctorate is really helps with that. When I left my practice in San Francisco, I moved back to the East Coast to get a PhD in counselor education because I thought
Hmm.
I wanted to teach, and it's really hard to teach with just a master's. And basically ended up in this counselor education program. And a big part of why it didn't work out is, well, two parts. One is I realized I was already teaching. I was teaching therapists through coaching, through courses, through whatever, and I was
Hmm.
doing it on my own terms. So I was like, oh, wait, I'm already doing this thing and am making more and working less than I would have in academia. The other thing
Yeah.
is the two mentors or faculty mentors that actually believed in my research on academia and private practice, bridging that gap, they both left the program. And so I was kind of left with no one who would endorse it, and actually a
Hmm.
faculty who came up to me and said, basically new counselors have no business even thinking about business. They just need to focus on developing their clinical skills, which I can see the validity to in a way, right? There's still a lot of clinical skills to acquire right after graduate school, but it's also like why can't you do both? Because they're very different parts of different parts of the
Yeah.
brain in a way.
Right, right. And really, if anything, it just equips people to be relieved of the anxiety, and it seems so overwhelming when you don't have the education and the tools. When it's actually not complicated. So that's the part that makes me sad. It's not like the complicated part of our lives is learning all those clinical skills, and to me, it just sort of feels like a little tag on
Yeah,
to get some of the business skills with it, and especially because as therapists, we already have the business. We just don't call it that. That like
yeah,
we know how to convince people to do what's right and what's best, and building a business is kind of runs off of that and kind of marketing and things like that. So I wish people didn't make it this. Ugh, I could get so fired up about it because it upsets me. But I'm glad you figured it out. Yeah, and you absolutely don't have to have the doctorate, obviously, to teach at all. So it's great.
yeah. There's many ways of accomplishing the same end, and I think with that being said, there's many different ways of building a private practice. Like I was talking to a therapist this morning, and she said, um, she's like, I'm so sick of getting all this pressure to just basically eliminate all my specialties and just choose one. So there's all this pressure to
Mm,
niche down so narrowly, even if it feels unnatural. And she's basically asking me, is that what I need to do or not? And I
mm,
think the problem is too many therapists or even people who help therapists, they they try to develop a hard and fast rule about everything, which is that, you either have a super narrow niche or you fail in building your
mm,
practice. And basically what I
yeah.
told this therapist was that's not necessarily true. You can build your brand differently, and there's many ways of getting to the same end. So
Hmm.
um, well, one thing I noticed that you are kind of doing with your content is you're helping answer some basic and even nitty gritty questions for therapists, even like I don't know, setting up your business entity or like kind of some nitty gritty stuff that I think can be barriers for therapists getting started. Well, two questions. Why have you chosen to focus on some of those nitty gritty topics that some would say are just not fun, or the not not as like thrilling as I don't know some of the other things. And then also, why do you think therapists um, uh, can get really anxious and overwhelmed in private practice.
Yeah, yeah, and I do think those questions go hand in hand. At least it all comes from my own experience, and
Mm.
then realizing over time that so many other people have the same experience. Sometimes we go through a struggle and we think like, oh, this is my personal issue, and nobody else seems to have this problem. And part of it's
Mm-hmm.
because like I didn't hear anybody else talk about getting an LLC, or I didn't know there was such a thing as a city business license, because again, they don't tell you about that like anywhere. So it's felt like, oh, I guess other people just kind of know this stuff, and I'm supposed to just figure it out. And if I don't know it, then I guess I'm doomed and I can't be in private practice. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
so ridiculous. And
Yeah.
other people are in the same boat. So it's realizing, oh, this isn't a me problem, and it destigmatizes it, it removes the shame. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, it's nitty gritty and learning about expenses and tax deductions or that type of thing isn't my favorite, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also not complicated, but it's just no it just someone has to say it, right? And to realize, okay, if we do a little bit of math or if we do a little bit of prep on the back end, and it's usually not hours and hours of work, just a little bit of work that's not fun, you can have this practice and
Mm-hmm.
do all the other really fun stuff. But if you just talk about the fun stuff and you don't know that you need a city business license,
Yeah.
or how to bill out of network insurance, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
then you're not going to be freed up to do all that work. So that's kind of the
Mm-hmm.
idea. Hopefully, I think you asked two questions and I lost track of one of them.
Well, yeah, the other one
Maybe I
was
answered it. I'm not
just,
sure.
yeah, just why do you think therapists get really overwhelmed with running a business?
Yeah, and I think that was kind of the idea, is that I think that sensation of I think I'm supposed to know this stuff, or magically
Mm-hmm.
other people know it because they don't talk about it being hard. I think that really holds people back.
Mm-hmm.
And that also, when I was starting out, I tried to ask other therapists like, "Hey, how do you do this?" And that sort of like, I'm not going to share my secret recipe
Oh,
with you because now
totally.
you're competition
Yep. Yep.
and you're moving in down the street. And I don't see it that way at all. It's like there's so many therapists where I live, but we can all be busy. So
Yeah, there's
why
so
don't we
many
help each other out? Because I'm going
therapists,
to
there's so
also
many
refer people to
clients.
you.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So I think all of that, like people can get really closed off, like don't take my clients from me. I'm not going to tell you my secrets. And um, I don't think it needs to be that way. And I think we need each other on so many levels, and this is just one of them.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I
and I
think
think
that,
a lot of folks come into it with some really limited mindset pieces, like, this therapist from earlier today said, I'm not good at marketing. I'm like,
mm,
okay, well, what does that mean? How did you come up with
yeah,
that? Well, she said, well, I'm not an extrovert, so I don't like networking. I said, okay, well, me neither. And so why does that mean you're not good at marketing, right? It's like that, or I'm not a good business owner, or one of my favorites, I'm not good with numbers. So I asked therapists, what's your gross revenue per month? And they go, I don't know, I'm not good with numbers. Like,
oh,
and it's like, where did you get that belief, and what
mhm,
is happening in your life that's keeping that belief going? And what happens
yeah,
is I think people, they stay stuck, and then they avoid the areas that make them feel uncomfortable or overwhelmed or incompetent, and they have big gaps and big holes in their businesses that, as you scale and get bigger, those gaps just become a lot more troublesome, you know.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that sort of unwillingness to face it because it's scary. Because I relate with almost all the things
Yeah.
you just said too. It's like, oh, I've been there, done that, all the marketing. I'm not extroverted. I'm not good with numbers. I've said all those things. But then to say, okay, well, I'm not going to let this stop me from
Totally.
doing this. Like, how do I work around it, or given my personality, or can I have someone help me with the numbers? And it's not complicated,
Hmm.
but that people kind of don't want to look at it and face it and
Hmm.
deal with it because it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I don't have to love numbers as much as my accountant, but I need to know enough, or I need to know what numbers to ask him
Yes.
for so that I can make decisions about my business. And
Hmm.
that's the other thing. You do have to kind of lean into your areas of weakness or whatever, and get help where it's needed. but you have to at least know what you're getting. That's the other thing too that kind of drives me nuts is that even if you say you don't know your numbers and you are going to work with a bookkeeper and accountant, well then you go and you ask your bookkeeper, you go, well, what are my numbers? And they go, well, which numbers do you want? You go, I don't know, just the numbers. So it's like you need
Yeah.
to know enough to know what you even need or
Yes.
how to hire good
Yes.
help.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Well,
kind of like if you know nothing about cars and the mechanic says you need this and that,
that's
and you
it.
just pay him for all of it,
Yep.
right?
Totally.
You do a little research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be an informed consumer of your business and this thing that you own. Um, well, I think you mentioned some people have already asked you this, but I noticed like your videos are really high quality and really
Thank
well
you.
lit, good audio, and I notice all these little things because I'm a nerd like that. I'm like,
I
oh, what
noticed those
camera is
things.
that?
Oh, yeah.
Uh, And that part, I think that
Yeah.
part doesn't even really matter as much as what you're saying,
Yeah.
right? So I don't want to lead
Yeah.
therapists down that path of like, oh, Marie's got, good videos because she has a good camera and I can't have good videos until I have a good camera. But
Yeah.
how did you get started in even, let's say, shooting videos for
Mm.
your YouTube channel, and how did you get them looking so good?
Well, thank you. I see, we all are our own worst critic, and I see
Always.
them like, my face is pink in this one. I couldn't get the color correction or the lighting. I don't have fancy lights, so it looks different depending on how cloudy it is that day and
Totally.
things like that. But it's kind of a fun hobby that's been part of my life. My older brother does film, and this like I feel like this dates me a little bit, but when we were kids, he had those big cameras with like the giant kind of VHS things. And back when I was in middle school, I would be his sort of muse, and we would do like music videos. And then he would edit them. That was kind of his thing, but I would kind of like look over his shoulder. So that's kind of where it's really started. And then this is like way back story, but when I was in grad school, um, this is my teacher side coming out. In college, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that now people know a lot more about, called celiac disease. But at the time, like no one knew what that was. And that's you have to change your diet to be gluten free.
Hmm.
And so no one knew what that was at the time. So I started filming videos, and kind of when YouTube was new.
Hmm.
And I got really into it. I got a following, so I started getting nicer and nicer cameras, learning about
Oh, I
video edit.
see.
It's just totally learn as you go. And I ended up privatizing all those videos because I didn't want to throw off clients today if they're looking up my name to think that that's maybe what my specialty is, when it's not particularly my focus. So they're all private, but if I can still access them, and it's so embarrassing.
Oh, yeah.
It came a long way, basically,
Yeah.
with like hundreds of videos. And then I
Okay.
started doing videos for my private practice. So I have a separate YouTube channel for that. And even
Cool.
then, if you go back to my older videos, I'm still embarrassed. So it's kind of like
Totally.
the more you do it, you just every time, and my goal is every time I make a video to learn one new thing. It's like, oh, okay,
That's
maybe this
awesome.
time I'm going to use the lapel mic
Yep.
and see how the sound comes out. And then, okay, this time I'm going to learn how to put titles on the screen, and just kind of challenge myself. And I have to watch other people's YouTube videos,
Yeah.
to figure that out. So it is, it's hard work, but every little time there's just a little tweak, and it adds up over
Yeah.
time to feel like, oh, actually, I kind of feel like I know a little bit what to do here. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what to call this attribute that you're describing, but I think it's absolutely essential, which is maybe it's just persistence, right? And curiosity as well of like, I'm going to try this damn thing and keep trying it and integrate what I've learned into many, many repetitions of something
Yes.
versus I'm going to try
Yes.
this once, and if it's not good as someone else's videos or whoever I'm comparing myself to, then I suck at video or I'm just not going to do it. And I think that's an interesting thing too. And if people, listen to this and go look at your YouTube channel, I think they could be liable to think, "Whoa, this is a newer YouTube channel, and these videos are so good. How will mine ever be this good?" Because they don't
Mm,
see what it
yeah.
was like before this. They don't see what you did, your trial and error. They don't see the B-roll or the clips that really did suck or whatever, where
Oh,
the lighting was
yes.
totally off or you forgot to turn on the mic. Like,
Hmm.
folks don't see that part either. They just see the final product and they go, wow, this is so good. Or they don't realize a 4-minute video edited was actually like half a day. Sometimes, the
Oh,
camera's not
yeah,
working, the
more than
battery
half a
shuts
day.
off. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, completely with you. You're almost making me feel like I should go find one of my first videos and just like post it somewhere on
Yeah.
Instagram
Yeah.
or something, just for good measure. 'Cause it really is so embarrassing. So I think, but maybe that would help encourage people. Just, I think that mindset helps us no matter where we're stuck. Like I did the same thing with
Yep.
website building.
Yep.
Just, I don't know what I'm doing. Just make it up as you go, break the website, just
Totally.
learn HTML or whatever, you kind of get it over time, and then you
Hmm.
get into a groove eventually. But it is this kind of like, I do see it as sort of a puzzle hobby, and I kind of find it intrinsically rewarding. And it does sort of fit personality to do that. My husband kind of jokes that I'm always fixing and making new things in the house. But like since I started private practice skills, our house is less cluttered because I'm like directing it all and it
Something
lives on
else to
the internet
focus
now.
on. Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, I have like 5 new macrame wall hangings. They're just, my macrame is my videos and my blog posts and stuff instead. So I'm
That's awesome.
happy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this has been great. I mean, I think talking about the bigger kind of culture of academia and private practice piece is important. We talked about anxiety, the therapists that we all face in private practice and in life, and basically dealing with like acquiring a new skill, whether that's just the same way you acquired the skill of therapy, acquiring the skill of shooting a video or shooting, YouTube content, and like just that iterative process that most people I think really take for granted when they look at a finished product. Anything else you want to add here then, like anything missing from the conversation, or even just like a piece of advice you have for therapists who are listening?
Yeah. Well, I just had a kind of closing thought on that same topic about the videos. That I just advise people, if they're interested in getting started with video, I tell people to just record a bunch of pretend videos.
Mm-hmm.
The same way we do role plays in grad school. Like you don't see your first client the first time you're practicing. It's like you do it with the classmate or something, kind of pretend. And so I always tell people, just record, pull out your phone or whatever, see what lighting is nice. Watch yourself, because it's usually really painful at first to just see and listen to yourself on video and just kind of get used to like, okay, that's what I look like to people and that's what I sound like. But don't post it, and just keep doing it. Maybe don't make hundreds of videos before you post something, but just learn a little bit give yourself permission to practice, because I think that really makes a big difference, so that you feel like, oh, maybe I can post something
Totally.
in a couple weeks. So
Awesome.
that was my closing thought on that topic.
I love that. That's spot on. Marie, thanks for being here, and close us out with how people can find out more about you and follow along.
Yes, thank you. And thanks for having me. You can find me probably most easily by going to my website, which is just privatepracticeskills.com. That's where you can kind of find the hub of all things. I mean, my videos embedded in my blog posts with all the tips. And if you are kind of just getting started, interested in getting started in private practice, there is a link at the top of the website in the menu for a free guide to get started in private practice. And I put like my heart and soul into that to try to cover like all the steps you need to get your practice off the ground. And I think people have been finding that helpful. So.
Sweet. Awesome. Marie, thanks again. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure, and thank you so much for having me.